So today we're going to look at whether we have worry or peace. What are we aiming for? And we're going to look at this in terms of both theory and practice. So we're going to look philosophically at the basis of worry and anxiety as opposed to peace. And then we're going to look practically. And when we look practically, we're first going to look at two principles of peace. And then we're going to look at 4 specific practices of peace. So, worry and anxiety. What do we worry about? What do we worry about? We tend to worry about, will I have enough of something? Am I going to get enough food? Am I going to get enough money? What am I, will I have enough of something? Am I going to run out? We also tend to worry about relationships. What will happen to my relationship with this person? What will happen to my relationship with that person? Is that going to be all right? Is that not going to be all right? This person's insulting me. This person hasn't spoken to me. This person may be angry at me. Will this person like me? And we tend to worry a lot about our relationships. Now, it's interesting. We often worry about our relationships as much as we worry about things like food or money, because as human beings, we're social creatures. And so our survival, our very survival, we feel is very much dependent on our group, our herd, you could say. And we feel that as, I'm going to get food if my herd is favorable to me. And then we worry about our choices. Am I going to the right school? Am I taking the right courses? Am I marrying the right person? Am I marrying at the right time? Should I have children? How many children should I have? What kind of car should I buy? Where should I live? How is this going to work out? So we spend a lot of time and energy worrying about our choices. Then we also worry about suffering. We may worry about our own suffering, our own health. We may worry about other people in our life. We're going through some kind of trauma with health, with their relationships, with their job, with finances. And we may worry about them. Are they going to be okay? Are they going to be happy? Is everything going to work out for them? Is there anything I can do for them? And so forth. So we worry what will happen with stuff. What's going to happen with my job? What's going to happen with my house? What's going to happen with my car? What's going to happen with my education? What will be the future? Very much what will be the future. Is it going to work out? Is it going to work out? And so that's things we already have. We're worried about, the possessions we already have, the education we already have, the job we already have. Is that going to work out? Is that going to work out? And then we worry about what we don't have. Am I going to get a suitable life partner? Am I going to get children? Am I going to get good children? Am I going to get money? Am I going to get respect? Am I going to get possessions? So we worry about maintaining the things that we have and growing them. And then we worry about whether or not we will get what we don't have. Now, the statistics show, studies show, that the main thing people worry about is whether they will run out of life before they run out of money. And I remember speaking to my mother, who was in a nursing home the last year of her life, and she was saying how much money it costs every year to pay for the nursing home. And, she was calculating how much savings she had, how much was coming in through pensions and so forth, and how many years she could afford to live. How many years could she afford to pay the nursing home bills? So this is the number one worry. Am I going to run out of money before I run out of life? And we may think, well, all right, if we just say, don't worry, does that mean I'm just going to be callous? I just won't care about anything. I'll be hard-hearted. I basically just won't have any feelings. Is that what it's going to mean? Is it going to mean a life, without feelings, without, I'm not worried, I'm just tough. My heart is like ice. My heart is like a stone. And I'm just cold and uncaring. We think about like people with certain psychological problems, sociopaths and psychopaths, they just don't care about anyone. I don't worry about my relationships because I don't care about anybody. I don't worry about money because I just don't care about it. And that's not very attractive, because once we shut off our feelings about worry, then we're going to shut off our feelings about everything. Some people think that not being worried is kind of the opposite to being hard-hearted. They think that not being worried means being childish and irresponsible. Oh, I'm just not going to worry about anything, let the bills pile up, whatever, I don't have to have a job and I don't have to care about my relationship with my spouse and my kids, and I'll just do whatever I want. I'll just sit around playing all day and watching Netflix all day. And whatever happens, happens, so an irresponsible life. So often we have this feeling that if I were to give up worry, that would make me either cold-hearted or it would make me irresponsible. And the reason we worry about things is we think, well, the things I'm worrying about are important. I'm worried about people I care about. I'm worrying about my future. I need to worry about them. They're uncertain. They might not work out. And whenever we're dealing with a difficult habit, and this is a really big and important secret, often when we have something that bothers us, like, I spend too much time and energy worrying, wish I could just get rid of it. We often don't take into consideration that if I am doing something, I'm doing something because it either benefits me or I believe it benefits me. And Srila Prabhupada speaks about this in the preface to the Nectar Devotion, where he says that everything everyone is doing is to experience rasa, or pleasure. So if we don't think that something is pleasurable, if we don't think that something's beneficial for us, we don't do it. And finding where we think we're getting a benefit, where we think we're getting some pleasure, is absolutely essential in being able to change some bad habit or some particular way of thinking or feeling, because we want to find another way, a better way of getting that pleasure. So we have to be able to identify what that pleasure is. So if we think about it for a minute, what's the benefits of worrying? And often the reason we worry is we're trying to rehearse. We're trying to have what we call a dress rehearsal for a problem. So we're trying to prepare ourselves for something bad coming up. Well, if I worry about this thing, then, if something bad happens, I will have prepared myself to deal with it. Or we may worry as a way of trying to avoid something bad. We think if I worry about things enough, I'll be able to figure out how to avoid something bad happening. The problem with worrying is it prevents us from taking pleasure in what we're experiencing right now. So we're so absorbed in worry that our joy is just sucked out of our life. So of course, we want to be prepared for the future. We want to be able to face uncertainty. And yet we want a life full of joy. I was just hearing Srila Prabhupada today speaking about how Krishna consciousness, the first symptom of spiritual life, is joy. And then he says, as soon as one's joyful, one is not hankering or lamenting, and then one sees everyone equally. So we want to have a life full of joy. We want to have a life that's a thrill at every moment. And at the same time, we want to be prepared to deal with the things in life. So is there a way to do that? Is there a way to be prepared? Is there a way to deal with life's uncertainty and at the same time live a joyful, peaceful life? So the answer to that, as you guessed, of course, is yes. Otherwise, we wouldn't be giving this class. And we're going to look, as we said in the beginning, at two principles of peace, and then 4 practices of peace. So first, we're going to look, now that we've examined the problem, we're going to look at the solution first in a general way, and then we're going to look at, what can I do in the next hour to have peace? So the first principle is, what is our shelter? What is our shelter? The first principle of peace. So we all have what is called in psychology, sociology, needs. We could define a need as something that if we don't have it, there's really a negative consequence, as opposed to, say, a want, where, there may or may not be a negative consequence. And we're looking here not at physiological needs. I mean, we could also at things like air and water and food, but we're going to look at more psychological, sociological needs. And this list comes from studies in psychology and sociology. Now, there's perhaps more than this, but we're going to look at needs of autonomy, connection, honesty, play, peace, meaning, and security. These are the things we want. If we look at this list again, these are the things that we want, that we're worried about, isn't it? Will I keep my autonomy? Will I get autonomy? Like that. So let's look at each of them in turn. So autonomy means being able to make my own choices in life. So my granddaughter just finished reading the very famous dystopian classic, 1984. And she said, Grandma, if we're not able to think our own thoughts, if we're not able to decide what are our opinions and what we believe, then we don't really have any kind of happiness in life. And we're not even human. She said, we're not even basically alive. We're just a thing. We're just a machine. And there's a place where Srila Prabhupada said that having our own opinion is an indicator of being a person. I have my own opinion. I have very good friends, very good devotee friends who have different political opinions than I have, who have different opinions about exactly what's this and that people should do and what's proper. We have our own opinions. We have our own thoughts on things, right? I was talking to this devotee the other day who said that her main happiness in marriage was being able to agree to disagree between her and her husband on different things. To say, you have a right to your own opinion. Not only our own opinion, but our own decisions, how we want to live our lives, to have say, right? In communist China, people would be forced to have an occupation, whether they liked it or not, whether they were good at it or not. So to have autonomy, a choice, who do I marry? What work do I do? What opinions do I have? We want to have freedom. Prabhupada says the need of the soul is freedom. Then we also need connection. We are designed to be connected. We are not designed to be alone. As I said, human beings are herd animals. We only function well if we have connection with the natural world, with other people, and so forth. We can't live, we can't exist, we can't be happy just being completely isolated. And a lot of what we do is to try to find this sense of connection and harmony with others. Then we need honesty and authenticity. We need to know that things are real. If we're being cheated, if things are not what they appear to be, then we don't know if something's going to make us sick or something's going to hurt us in some way. We have a great need for honesty and authenticity. And I believe that those who take up spiritual life especially have this need very prominent in their life. And then it may surprise you that we also have a need for play and fun. Play and fun is not just something to be done, on the side if you have enough time, but it's there because Krishna is very playful. Krishna is engaging in Leela and Krita. And because we are part of Krishna, we are made in the image of the Lord, we also have a need for play and fun. There's a lot of medical research that making time for play and fun can help cure many diseases. It can help mitigate and even eliminate a lot of chronic pain. And the people who don't have time for play and fun often become, again, sick and in pain. because their body's always under stress. So like Krishna says that the yogi has time for recreation. And then we need peace. We need serenity. We need to be able to relax. We need to be able to let go of things. Right? We can't be constantly going, or even playing. We need times of peace. We need times where, I know as a child, I used to go out and just sit in the forest. And we had a forest behind your house. Just sit in the forest, look up at the stars at night, look at the trees, sit by a river, and just have peace. We need to have some meaning in our life. And I think those who take up spiritual life particularly cannot live without meaning. But everyone needs to know that what they do is valuable. Everybody needs to know that they have some significance, that they have some value, that what they're doing has meaning to themselves, to others, and to the world. We're not able to function if we feel just useless. And we need a sense of security. If we don't have some sense of security, then our bodies are always in a stress response. And again, we'll get sick. On the stress response, we can't digest our food properly. Our immune system collapses. Our higher order thinking collapses. Our bodies and minds are not able to function in a constant state of stress. We need some sense of security. So we looked at some of the needs that are, again, studied by psychologists, sociologists. And our worry comes because the place I go to get those needs is not the place where I can find them. I need those things. Without those things, without peace, without meaning, without autonomy, without play, I can't function. I basically can't even live or be healthy, what to speak of being happy. But if I go someplace to get those needs met that cannot fulfill those needs, I'm going to have a lot of anxiety. So now, where are these wrong places I go? Well, one place I go to is my body. I think my body is going to fulfill my need for autonomy. My body is going to fulfill my need for play. My body is going to fulfill my needs for connection and meaning. But my body is going to let me down. It can get broken. It can get sick. It gets old. It gets tired. I can't rely on my body. But the human body is a very, very fragile machine, right? It's very, very fragile. It's extremely easy. Like right now, we're in a global pandemic with this little teeny tiny virus is just decimating our society. So, we're very, very vulnerable in the body. What about our mind? So we go to our mind to meet our needs, but our mind can't always meet our needs. The mind gets waves of anger and fear and confusion and depression. And, it's just not possible for us to get all of our needs met by relying on our mind. I don't think any of us would like to dump the contents of our mind out for public display, right? It jumps everywhere and it jumps to things that don't really serve us. Or we go to get our needs met from other living beings, other people, or maybe animals, but they can't always meet our needs either. First of all, even if they want to, it just may not be possible. They have their own lives, they have other things to do, they may not always be available for us when we need them. But even if they can, theoretically, they don't always. Even people who love us and care about us and so forth are simply not always going to meet our needs. And many times we get very disappointed by people we think, well, I'm going to be able to rely on this person to meet my needs. I'm going to be able, my faithful dog is going to greet me every day. And we get disappointed. Or we rely on things to meet our needs. And again, these things, we can't rely on them. Right? So you can understand now where our worry is coming from. I have these needs that must be fulfilled, and I'm relying on my body, my mind, other living beings, or things. And all of those are unreliable. The Bhagavatam, the Srimad Bhagavatam, calls them fallible soldiers. fallible soldiers. They appear to be soldiers, my body, my mind, other people or animals and things, they appear to be soldiers, but they're fallible, they're not reliable. So I'm investing everything to get my needs met in something fallible. And my body, my mind, other living beings, things, can they really protect what I have? Is that possible? Is my body going to protect everything I have? Is my mind going to protect everything I have? My family, my friends, my dog, my cow, my computer, my car. And can they really bring me what I lack? So I think it's very obvious here why I'm worried, right? I'm worried because I desperately need something. And the place I'm going for getting my needs met is shaky. So therefore, we can see all these things we talked about that we worried about in the beginning. Why are we worrying about them? Because they're so shaky and uncertain. So my first principle of peace is to get my needs met from the real shelter, to get my needs met from an infallible source. So my first infallible source, surprisingly enough, is my own self. I am a soul. I am a soul, and I myself as a soul by nature am infallible. I as a soul, I can't die. I can't be withered by the wind. I can't be moistened by water. I'm eternally the same. Yes. I'm actually my real self. Me, the soul, is a seat of stability and power. We talk about Atma Rama, a person who can find satisfaction in self. Now, just taking shelter of my real self, the soul, is not sufficient because I'm very tiny. So therefore, I also want to take shelter of the super self, of which I am a part. I am a small fragment. I'm a fragmental part, me, the spiritual being, of the ultimate spiritual being, the super self, the super soul. And when my shelter is in my own real self as the soul and my source, the super soul, those are infallible sources. I don't have to worry that my body, my mind, other people and things are going to disappoint me, because the real self and the super self can't disappoint. They're infallible. So my second principle is then having a trust. So having the right shelter and then trusting that shelter. Because I might think, well, I, the soul and the super soul, are capable of meeting all my needs, but will that actually happen? Right? So we have this trust, and I like to really meditate on this mantra. There's a school in London, not a Hare Krishna school, St. John's school, where all the students learn Sanskrit, and this is one of their favorite mantras. They call it the perfect mantra. So you'll have to stay muted, but maybe we can sing this together. So first I'll say and you repeat, but you will have to stay muted. I'm sorry, because of the lag. So Om Purnamada Purnamidam, if everyone can sing. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudat Shate. If you can sing. Purnat, with stay muted. Purnat Purnam Udat Shate. Purnasya Purnamadaya. Everyone. Purnasya Purnamadaya. Purnameva Vasishyate. Everyone. Purnameva Vasishyate. So the literal meaning of this verse is, this is complete, that is complete. From the complete comes. When you take the complete away from the complete, still the complete remains. So we have trust that when I revive my connection with the complete whole is completely satisfying. It's complete in everything, which means it's complete in satisfaction. The complete whole is complete in love. complete in satisfaction, complete in love, complete in pleasure. Now, does that mean there's going to be certainty when I have this trust that when I'm in connection with the complete whole, I'm in connection with complete satisfaction, complete love, and complete pleasure? Does that mean that my life is going to be full of certainty externally? No. There's never been any kind of certainty about the externals of my life. Does it mean I'm going to be in complete control of my life? No. There's never been absolute certainty of my life, and I'm never going to be in complete control. I mean, sometimes we become aware of this truth. Sometimes we become aware of the uncertainty and lack of control we have in life, right? Sometimes life goes on day after day. You know, I wake up at the same time. I go to work at the same time. I do my sadhana at the same time, or whatever, you know, and I feel like I'm in control of what I'm doing, and I can be certain this is going to happen this time and that time and this way. And every once in a while, it becomes really obvious, whoa, I am not in control and things are uncertain. So we're not looking here for control. We're looking here for trust. We're not looking that, well, if I depend on my real self and the super self, and I'm in connection with the complete whole that's completely satisfying, completely loving, you know, completely joyful, but then I'll have some sense of control. No, what I'll have a sense is trust. All right, so those are the two principles, having the right shelter and having trust in that shelter. So now we're going to look at, well, what does that mean? If I have those principles, how does that play out in my life? What will I actually do? What will I think? How will I feel? And how will I act? So I've analyzed this into four, that if one follows these principles of having the right shelter and having trust in that shelter, the way one will think, feel, and behave is that we'll be devoted to the right shelter. We'll be devoted to the eternal and secure rather than the temporary and fallible. There'll be some sense of devotion. We can tell where our shelter is by where our devotion is. Another thing we can do is we act without attachment to results. We stop putting our investment in the results. Another is that we become absorbed in the present. We stop being absorbed in the past and the future. All worry is about past and future. And then we delight in the adventure, in the uncertainty. So let's look at each of these in turn. So to be devoted to the eternal and secure rather than the temporary and fallible. So here we're going to look at Bhagavad Gita, verse 245. And here Krishna ends this verse with Nir Yoga Kshema Atmavan. Nir Yoga Kshema Atmavan. So near is not. So don't be worried about gain and safety. So safety is protecting what you have, gain is getting what you don't have. Atmavan, instead, be established in the self. So this is getting that attachment for my real self, caring about my real self more than about these fallible soldiers. And then I realized that my real self, the soul, as we were saying, cannot be harmed. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 2:23 that the soul can't be cut into pieces by any weapon or burned by fire or moistened by water or withered by the wind. So I start investing there. I start investing in that infallible. I start really caring about myself, doing activities that are for my real self. You know, it's interesting that people have the saying nowadays, love yourself. Well, you can't love yourself if you don't know who you are. You know, it's kind of hard just to love the body. The body's kind of stinky and disgusting and fallible in so many ways, or the same with the mind. But the real self, the soul, is wonderful. Yes, and I can actually, Krishna says this, I can love the self. He says, relish and rejoice in the self. He says that in Bhagavad Gita 6:20-23. He He says, we relish and rejoice in the self. He says, being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. So this means we start taking time to do things of the self and of the super self. We put our time, our energy, our money, our intelligence, our creativity, our plan making into the real self and the super self. We start making an investment. Now, instead of, obviously we have to take care of the body and mind and other people and things, but that's not where our main investment goes. It's not where our main emotional attachment goes. It's not where the bulk of our time goes, the bulk of our energy. At least half of our energy probably should go to the spiritual. We absorb ourselves in the real rather than the temporary. Absorb our thoughts, absorb our feeling, absorb our behavior. Right? So I spend time, to spend time chanting Hare Krishna, to spend time offering our food to the Lord, to read the scriptures, to associate with devotees. Second action is I act with attachment to the super self and the real self instead of material results. Now, this may sound like the same thing, but it's at a deeper level. Because I can be, please listen very carefully, I can have an investment and attachment in my real self as a soul and in Krishna as a super soul, and yet I can still end up being also attached to material results. I can think, well, what's really going to make me happy is if I can make a lot of money for Krishna, or I can build this temple for Krishna, I can distribute a lot of books for Krishna. And although those are spiritual activities, and although they're related to the real self and to the super self, I become attached to the external results. I become attached to the external results, which are, again, something that I can't control, right? It really becomes the same sort of material worry and anxiety, but is disguised as something spiritual. So instead, I give up attachment in the results. Krishna speaks about this a lot in the Bhagavad Gita, right? In the second chapter, at text 38, 48, 50, he says, perform your duty equipoise, O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. Work without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. Strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. So we start working instead of thinking, well, I have to get this result, I have to get that result in order for me to be happy, in order for me to have my needs met. I say, whether my work is a success or a failure, it doesn't matter externally. Of course, if we're trying to cook something nice for Krishna, then we should try to cook something nice for Krishna. But Krishna ate Vijay's banana peels, and he didn't eat Duryodhana's feast. Jatayu, who failed to rescue Sita from Ravana, was very dear to Ram and Lakshman, and they performed his funeral ceremony just as they would do for a father. When the cowherd men failed to prevent the cows from running down Govardhan Hill to see their calves, which were actually expansions of Krishna, Krishna was very pleased, even though the cowherd men externally, ostensibly, were failures. And on the other hand, we can sell a lot of books and build a lot of temples, and if we're doing it all out of pride and ego, it's not that satisfying. So the art of spiritual work in yoga is, instead of investing in the external result, we invest in Krishna's smile. Prabhupada said the gopis, the residents of Vrindavan, they're just concerned, is Krishna smiling? And what's really nice is that Krishna is pleased by the intention and by the effort. Now, that doesn't mean we can do anything with good intentions. They say the way to hell is paved with good intentions. If I'm trying to get to Chicago, if my intention is to get to Chicago, but I get on the road going to Dallas, it doesn't matter how well intentioned I am. So if we want to go to Chicago, we have to get on the road going to Chicago. But whether or not I get to Chicago, Krishna is concerned with the intention. I mean, it's very interesting with Madhavendra Puri. His deity, Gopal, told him, please bring me sandalwood and camphor to cool me. And so Madhavendra Puri went to Jagannath Puri and with great difficulty got a load of sandalwood and camphor. And then he stopped in Maimuna. And then the deity appeared to him and said, you know, you don't have to bring this all the way back to Vrindavan. It'll be so difficult for you. You know, just put the sandalwood and the camphor on the deity there, Gopinath and Maimuna, and that we're the same person, and I'll be satisfied there. So although it seemed that Madhavendra Puri had failed to bring the sandalwood and the camphor back to Vrindavan, he had certainly made an effort, and Krishna was pleased with that effort and that endeavor. Isn't that wonderful? Wouldn't we like have somebody in our life who was pleased with our intention and our effort, regardless of the result? So we start investing in that. Have I pleased Krishna? Is Krishna smiling at my effort? Rather than what result am I going to get? We can control whether or not Krishna is pleased with our effort, but we can't control the external result. How can we control whether or not Krishna is pleased? Because he tells us what will please him, right? He tells us, right? He says what pleases him. If we look in Bhagavad Gita 12:13 to 20. So what does Krishna say? He says, one who's not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor, who's free from false ego, right? He for whom no one is put into difficulty, who is not disturbed by anyone, who's not dependent on the ordinary course of events, so forth and so on. So Krishna is telling us what pleases him. One who gives this message to others is very dear to him. So we make that effort to please him. Okay, third thing is to be absorbed in yoga in the immediate present. So this is now going on to a deeper level. So we start with, we're going to invest in the spiritual rather than material. We're going to invest in ourselves as a soul and the super soul. Then we're going to do that with attachment to pleasing Krishna rather than attachment to the results. And a further step is we're acting to please Krishna now, and now, and now, and now, and now. Because otherwise, again, it can be, well, I'm acting to please Krishna by this beautiful temple that I'm going to build, or I'm acting to please Krishna by this garland I'm going to make. But suppose you never finish it. Then what happens? Right? And we we can get dependent on this result that we're going to worry about. But if I'm working to please Krishna now, in the eternal spiritual reality, it says in the Brahma Samhita 556, there is the eternal existence of transcendental time that is ever present without past or future. The ultimate reality is to be always in the present. And Bhaktivinoda liked this poem. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Bhaktivinoda kind of adapted it slightly. But trust no future, however pleasant, let the dead past bury its dead. Act in the living present, heart within and God overhead. Let us then be up and doing with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait. So the idea is that at every moment, I'm looking for Krishna's smile, not just after the cookies come out of the oven and I offer them to him. I'm looking for Krishna's smile when I buy the ingredients. I'm looking for Krishna's smile when I mix up the batter. I'm looking for Krishna's smile when I put them in the oven. I'm looking for Krishna's smile at every moment. To have this present moment awareness, it's me and Krishna, and I'm looking, is Krishna smiling at me right now? This is something we can all do right now. This is not after Urmila finishes the class. This is right now. Is Krishna smiling at me right now? Am I pleasing Krishna right now? Am I pleasing Krishna 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 now? All right, now we're going to go to the deepest level, the hardest, but the best. All right, so I've done that. I've invested in myself, the real soul. I've invested in the super soul. I'm engaged in spiritual activities of Krishna consciousness, of bhakti yoga. Instead of being attached to the material result, I'm attached to Krishna's smile. And I'm attached to Krishna's smile moment by moment by moment by moment by moment, not just at the end of an activity, but at every moment. All right, suppose I do that and still terrible things happen, because sometimes they will. Terrible things happened to Srila Prabhupada. He was gored by a bull. He lost all his money in his business. He had heart attacks on a boat. Terrible things happened to the Pandavas. They were cheated at dice. They were exiled. We read in the Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, terrible things happen, even to great devotees. What to speak of to us? I mean, anything you can imagine that can happen, you'll find some devotee that it happened to. So it's not that when we do those three things, our life is going to be, like Krishna's just going in front of our life with a bulldozer, making a smooth path for us. So finally, giving up worry and anxiety means that we have this trust that our needs for security, communication, connection, love, meaning, freedom, self-expression, all these things we talked about, that these will be met in a perfect way in time, and not necessarily how we imagine would be the best way. We see this trust between the child and the parent. Obviously, material parents aren't perfect, but generally, most parents, they want to meet the needs of their children, but the children may not realize that, right? The children, they want their cookie right now, and the parents want them to eat their broccoli first, right? Or the parents want them to go to sleep, or the parents want them to go to school. And the children may not understand that the parents are going to meet their needs, but not necessarily in exactly the way the children want. It might not be the way and the time, manner, etc., that the children want, but that the parents are going to make sure that the children's needs are always perfectly met. Yes? And then our life becomes a great adventure story. I mean, really, if we had a life where everything was just perfectly, exactly, there were no problems, it would also be boring. Krishna doesn't like that. Krishna, who can do anything, creates leelas of uncertainty. He creates leelas of conflict, because that's what's fun. So we know I can't be hurt. I'm a soul. I can't be hurt. I already have everything I need. And then what I'm going through is just an adventure story. I like this quote from Helen Keller. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. Security does not exist in nature, nor do the children of men as a whole experience it. Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than exposure. All right, let's just summarize what we did, and then we have time for questions. So we worry about what we need in order to be happy, fulfilled, safe. Right? I need this and I need that. I need to keep this. I need to get this. And that way I'm going to get all my needs met. But what we're worrying about to meet our needs are the wrong things. That's why we're worrying about them. We're worrying about things that cannot reliably and fully meet our needs. Those things are fallible. They can't create a sense of shelter. So the principles of peace is I shift my attachment to the real source of completeness, love, pleasure, security, myself as a soul in connection with the supreme whole, who's going to lovingly meet my needs in the perfect way. And then how do I behave? I have internal and external devotion and attention to my real spiritual self and connection with the complete whole. Then I do enthusiastic action with attachment to spiritual things rather than to the external results. And I take pleasure and satisfaction in that connection in the moment, and I exult in whatever adventure then. I'm always safe, whatever adventure I go on. And this gives me peace, not because now I can control the future, but because my attachment and my happiness is in truth. Okay, so we have some time for questions and comments. Do that. people to unmute or just put things in the chat or however you would like that to.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you for very nicely explaining and clarifying many of the points that many of us have. We wonder how to handle this stress or this dealing with peace and worry. Before we go into questions, I just wanted to make two announcements because while we do the questions, a lot of people tend to drop off. So one is that I'd like to announce that one of our core congregation members, Lalit Prabhu and Natasha Mataji, just this week on Tuesday, they welcomed a Vaishnava boy in our family. So we welcome. His name is Krish. So we're very happy to have a new family member in our ISKCON Bergen community. Also, this coming Wednesday, for our 10-part series of avoiding offenses against the holy name, this Wednesday's talk will be given by His Grace Hari Parshad Prabhu. So we're very fortunate to have him with us also, and we'll be covering the 6th offense to give some interpretation to the holy name. So that's pretty much it. If anybody has a question, please raise your hand or unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare
Yes.
Krishna.
Please go ahead,
Hare
Swati.
Krishna. Okay, thank you so much, Mataji, for the wonderful session. Mataji, my question is, if it's a material problem, if it's a worry at work, a project or a promotion or something like that, and you're worrying about...
Your voice is
Can
not
you hear me?
audible.
Your audio is a little funny.
Oh, hold on.
Is it better now?
Oh, much better. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. So thank you so much, Mataji, for the wonderful lecture. My question is, if it's, material project, it's a work-related project or something that you're worrying about, how do you really, depend on Krishna or not? How do you reduce your attachment to the results? Because you're really working towards getting that promotion or, completing something successfully.
Okay, well, who's actually maintaining you? Your boss or Krishna?
Krishna.
How do you know that?
I believe in it.
Where's your boss getting his or her money from? Krishna, right?
Right.
Right? I mean, we can work hard for a company and the company can go bankrupt. Right? I could please my boss and do everything and the company goes bankrupt and they can't pay me. It's Krishna who's maintaining me. Ultimately, the company is just the middle person. So I've got to please my real boss. He's the one maintaining me. And what pleases my real boss, Krishna, is my effort and my intention. That doesn't mean I don't work hard to try to do a good project or whatever it is I'm doing at work. But I can work hard without the anxiety. I can work hard. Krishna, I'm doing this for you. And take pleasure in each moment.
Thank you, Mataji. That's very helpful.
I mean, it's a question of practice.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
All right, just practice it. Try at work to just like in each moment. Okay, Krishna, is this making you smile? 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 Try practicing it, and it's very life transformative. All right? Can you try?
Thank you, Mataji. Yes, thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome. Yes. Okay, yes, we have some people with hands up.
Ramcharan Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
So, Mother, we live in this world, believe, it's actually we're chasing and satisfying our desires and urges. Uh, this is then this is actually the freedom. That's what we feel like. But actually, Bhagavad Gita suggests or scripture suggests that real freedom is, we don't need to. We don't need to chase these things. Real freedom is a kind of self-control, as explained in the Bhagavad Gita 2. I think 6.4, the regulative principles of freedom. So I'm just wondering, Mataji, like, see in this world, how we can actually propagate this message, because outside world they think that this restriction, the regulation life is really the uh, like they, they take it as a negative side, like I think like it is a restrictive, and also it is being imprisoned. But actually, in reality, actually we are imprisoned by them. So how we can explain that real freedom comes from the controlling urges?
I would suggest that you first go for the positive. That you talk about getting attached to the spiritual, to the super self, to our real spiritual nature, that we're not this body, and get into controlling urges later. I wouldn't start with that. But frankly, most people understand that they're not going to be happy if they just indulge their urges like an animal or a 1-year-old baby. I mean, I think that's a common understanding among human beings, that some amount of self-control and self-restraint is necessary for happiness. I don't think that's some kind of radical or, revolutionary concept. It's something that people understand. But the problem is that people are restraining their urges for a material purpose.
Mhm.
People are working hard at a job, doing something they may not like even, and spending many hours doing that instead of other things, simply so they can get money and shelter and things like that. So everybody's restraining their urges. I mean, that's another thing you can say to people. You're already restraining your urges. Why not do it for a higher purpose? Everybody's doing that. Who is it that just eats whatever they want, whenever they want? I mean, how could you live like that? People don't have, sexual relations with just whoever they want, whenever they want. I mean, even animals have a hard time doing that. They often have to fight for a mate. And sometimes they get all banged up and bloody in the process. It's you can't live like that. We don't just get whatever we want. We have to work for it. We have to save our money. We have to not buy other things we want, isn't it? I mean, everybody's restricting themselves somewhat. Even extremely wealthy and powerful people have to do that. So why not do that for a purpose that's really going to get us a real benefit? And tell people that. But I wouldn't lead with the idea of, I wouldn't start out your first sentence with the 4 regulative principles if you're going to talk to people about Krishna consciousness. I don't think that should be the first sentence out of our mouth. I think, better to look at, hey, wouldn't you rather, whatever satisfaction you're getting in life, wouldn't you rather get more? Wouldn't you rather get something that's eternal? Wouldn't you rather have life be an adventure where you're feeling both a sense of adventure and a sense of security? You're already investing so much time, energy into things in this world. Why not invest that same time and energy into the eternal things? You're already restricting your senses. You're already restricting your mind. You're already restricting your speech. Why not do it for something spiritual? You can get into the details later. Get people to accept that idea, and then you can say, well, these are restrictions that will be helpful, but that's a little later. I mean, you can mention, many times I'll mention in a first class to new people, meat eating, illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, but I'm not going to push that in the beginning to people. I may mention that so if someone's really interested, they can take it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, Yes, Mother. Like even not even regulative principles, even the concept of self-control as well. Even the without going to the details of four regulative principles, even the self-control itself is not appetite to the others to to by your
I don't know what kind of people you know, but I don't know anyone who doesn't accept that self-control is necessary.
Hmm.
I mean, who thinks that they can just exhibit their anger anytime with anybody in any way? Who believes that?
Hmm.
I mean, even most animals don't do that. You know, the males are fighting over a female. They check out. You know, do I want to fight with that male or not? Maybe I don't. Maybe they're bigger and stronger than I am. Maybe I'll just let them have it. You know, do I really want to fight over the territory with that other tiger? Maybe not. I mean, it's not that the animals just do whatever no, they also have some consideration. What to speak of human being? I can't, I mean, what human being doesn't use self-control? A tiny baby only. You know, it's really only a very tiny baby who doesn't have any kind of self-control. So I think it's a matter of getting people to recognize they're already using self-control. Most people think that they are self-controlled. So, you know, why not do it for a higher purpose?
Yeah.
I don't, how can you live without some self-control? I don't know how it's possible.
Yeah.
How are you going to make money? How are you going to, you know, how are you going to do well in school? How are you going to make a living? I mean, even criminals have to have some self-control.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
They have to steal at the right time when nobody's there, and they have to spend a lot of time thinking about their plan for their criminal activity.
Yes.
Otherwise, you know, they're going to end up in jail very quickly. So I don't know. I haven't met somebody who doesn't exercise some self-control. I've just never experienced that. Have you? Do you know anybody who doesn't have self-control at all over anything? Except a little baby?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yes,
so I think people already accept the concept. I think that's a universally understood concept. But then you can go from there. Well, what should we be controlling and for what purpose?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mother.
Sure.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Yes.
I really love your talks, the level of concept and preciseness to your conversations is really amazing. Thank you. I have three things to bring forward and one question. Actually, two things. So in your class today, we heard the word need and worry a lot of time. So obviously this is the center of focus for us. So what is need and what is worry? That is something, a concept we all understand at some level, but at a spiritual level, how does it fit? That's one. And second question is really.
And that was two questions. You already had your one question, already had two questions. What is need and what is worry? So need is something that if you don't have it, there's going to be some suffering in some way. If I don't have air, if we talk about physiological needs, if I don't have air, if I don't have water, if I don't have food, there's a direct consequence. And the same thing is there with psychological or emotional needs. As we were saying, there's a lot of study that people who never play, who never have any fun, end up with chronic pain and chronic diseases. So these are things that we need. You know, we need some connection. We can't function well as social animals without some connection. So there's some consequence. There may not be a consequence with things that I want. You know, I asked a devotee the other day, what would you like for your birthday? And the devotee said, I'd like a Tesla. But there's not going to be, obviously I'm not going to get them a Tesla, but I looked up, even a toy Tesla would be like $30. But it's not going to be like some sort of negative consequence if you don't get a Tesla. It's not the same as if you don't have autonomy. So that's a need. Worry means that one is filled with a sense of anxiety, fear, dread. One's mind is churning about past or future scenarios in an effort to try to control whether or not we get our needs met. This happened in the past, this happened in the past, this may happen in the future, this may happen in the future. So a thinking about, a churning in the mind with concerns and anxiety about what's going to happen in terms of getting my needs met. Okay, and what was your other question, which I wouldn't be surprised is another 2 questions stuck into one?
Thank you. So other question is rather maybe simple, but that might be just my lack of understanding. You also use the sentence very passionately, very clearly, that is Krishna pleased? Is Krishna pleased? So inquire yourself with a full heart and your full understanding of it. So how do we achieve that stage, what you just try to convey to us, and how do we get the confirmation of it, that is it really happening? Is
I
Krishna
knew it
really
was 2
pleased?
questions. I was right. How do we achieve the state and what's the confirmation of it? How do we achieve that state? Well, that's the whole idea of Krishna consciousness, is to have that state of working to please Krishna. It's not that difficult, really. It's just simply doing that. I learned from Sadhu Shastra Guru what pleases Krishna, and then I make an effort to do that. Even if I fail, the fact that I've made an effort to do that is enough. Mother Yasoda failed to please Krishna when she went to take care of the overboiling milk, but the fact that she was making an effort to please Krishna was enough to have it be counted as bhakti. So I make an effort to be kind to other living entities. I make an effort to be detached. I make an effort to try to help Mahaprabhu's mission, to help Srila Prabhupada's mission, for the purpose of having Krishna's smile. And what's my confirmation? My confirmation is, am I acting according to Sadhu Shastra Guru, or am I doing something concocted, or am I doing something according to Sadhu Shastra Guru? That's objective. And then my subjective is Rajavijja Rajagriyam Pavitrami Damuttamam Pratyakshavagamam Dharmam Susukam Kartamaviyam. Am I full of happiness? Is my life full of authenticity? Do I understand secret hidden knowledge? Do I get realization? Those are my confirmations that Krishna's pleased. Okay, we can take one more because I have actually somebody needs to talk to me about a project that I'm on. So Jai Draupadi would be the last one. Hare Krishna. Oh, we can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Mataji.
Can't hear you.
We'll quickly jump to Vijay Prabhu. He has one question.
You can, Jai Draupadi, you can put it in the, type it in the chat window.
Yeah, you can type it to me. I'll read.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Can you hear me clear?
I can hear you, yes.
Fantastic. Dandavat Pranam. Your presentation was, every slide was a home run. So my quick question, as you mentioned,
We must have won that ball game.
Yeah. So my question, and so as we know that as human beings are so fragile, and all the time we're so hypersensitive about few things. So all these years, and you being in the moment, how did you maintain the faith? Because there are some challenges where you say thank you Krishna, and then there are some challenges, health or the setbacks come where you really question Krishna, saying why Krishna, And then, so, and we are so fragile. So I was wondering, looking at the senior devotees, how do you have maintained this constant faith? If you can share a few lights, I'll appreciate that.
Well, it's interesting you asked that question, and I think it's a nice question to end with. Srila Prabhupada talks about himself, and he talks about how that his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisanta Saraswati, asked him to preach Krishna consciousness to English-speaking people. And Prabhupada thought, well, to do that, I first have to have a lot of money, so let me start a business. And Prabhupada started a business. It was a successful business. And then just at the point, Prabhupada's children were growing up and getting married, and he was thinking, now I can devote myself to preaching, and I've amassed this money in this business. The whole thing collapsed. Everything collapsed. And Srila Prabhupada is speaking about it, and my own preference is to accept that Srila Prabhupada is speaking honestly about himself. He said that at first he was very upset, and he was thinking, I must have done some mistake. Krishna must be displeased with me that all this has failed. Why has this happened? I wanted to do it for his service. He said, and then I saw this verse, tomorrow's Yudhisthira, that those who I'm pleased with, I sometimes take away everything. And he said, then I could understand Krishna wanted me to start this movement in another way. Now, if you think of what happened after that, Prabhupada spent about 4 or 5 years being essentially homeless. He was moving from temple to temple and place to place. He tried staying in a Gaudiya Math temple in Delhi, and they literally threw him out. They said, we don't want you pushing the brahmacharis to preach, and you're just agitating people, to print more books and to go out and preach. So just go to Vrindavan. And he really had no place to live. He was struggling for paisa, not even rupees. He was struggling for paisa. He would take a train to see a possible donor without knowing if he had the money to get there. And he was managing all aspects of publication himself with his back to God. And, he was writing, he was editing, he was doing the layout, he was going to collecting the money, and he was selling the copies. And then, then somebody said to him, why don't you write books? People are more likely to keep books than magazines. Eventually he got a room for 5 rupees a month at Radha Damodar. And even then, he was alone, and he didn't have any institutional support or whatever. And another 5 years or so like that. Then he gets a ride on a cargo ship. Not a plane and not even a passenger ship, a cargo ship where he has heart attacks on the way. He comes to a foreign country. He'd never been out of India before. And as you well know, the culture of India and the culture of America are significantly different. And, he comes to America where he has the address of the son of an acquaintance that he can connect with. He couldn't change his rupees in America. He had about 40 rupees, but he couldn't even exchange them. So he basically had no money. And he was staying at a YMCA and so forth. And then he was staying at an impersonalist yogi's place. Then he stayed at a place that didn't even have a shower. Then he was staying down in the Bowery with the bums and with drug addicts, and even then at 26 Second Avenue, they only had the first month's rent when they got the place. And Srila Prabhupada is just out in Tompkins Square Park playing cartels. He has a suitcase of Bhagavatams, which wasn't a good material printing job. If you've seen the old Bhagavatams, the paper was not good quality. The lines were not straight on the page, they were crooked. Prabhupada had done his own editing, so the English spelling and the English grammar were often substandard. And the Sanskrit didn't have diacritics and so many things. There wasn't any beautiful artwork. That's all Prabhupada had, he had those books, which, they weren't particularly attractive books, materially speaking. That's it. And from that, Prabhupada started a movement. Krishna didn't have Prabhupada start a movement with a lot of money. And, later George Harrison got involved and other people got involved. And later we started an incense business and then book printing and artists. But that was why? So we could look at it and say, this was done with spiritual power. Nobody can look at how Prabhupada started ISKCON and say that was done with material power, because there wasn't any at all, nothing. Who starts something like that? No capital, no connections. You know, I mean, who would do that? But Krishna did that. Why? Because Krishna wanted to show that it was being done wholly and solely with spiritual power. In fact, Krishna often empowers people who materially don't have ability to show that it's his power. So this was Srila Prabhupada's experience. So if this is Srila Prabhupada's experience, why would I not have such experiences? You know, Prabhupada talked about this one time, how, you know, Haridas Thakur, the Pandavas, they had so many difficulties. Why should we think that we're above difficulties? But if we're in Krishna's service, Krishna's using those difficulties for a reason. I mean, for myself, I've definitely been through some pretty heavy crises of faith. One when I was in the movement a couple of years, where I was very disappointed by the behavior of particularly a temple president in GBC. And I came to the understanding that my faith in Krishna consciousness was not dependent on how some other member of ISKCON behaved, even if it was a member with a title. But my faith in Krishna consciousness was dependent on my own personal experience of Krishna consciousness. And it was, my husband said to me at the time, he said, when you go to a university, you don't look at all the other students, you look at the graduates and the professors. You know, the other students may be partying, but that doesn't mean it's a bad school. You look at the ones who are serious. And then some years later, I had another very, actually it was the same incident. And I guess for about 4 years after that, I had a lot of anger and bitterness. I mean, I didn't leave Krishna consciousness, I didn't stop my practices, but I had a lot of anger and bitterness about what happened. And I really didn't see Krishna's hand in it. It felt like we had given everything, and it had just, the result had been really horrible. I was very disappointed. That went on for about 4 years, that I kept this bitterness and this angst. And then I got involved in other things and other service, and it kind of dissipated. And about 15 years after the original incident, things happened where I saw that it was really a blessing, that original incident was a great blessing, that Krishna had saved me and saved my family from what would have been just an awful, awful situation. That what I thought was wonderful and I thought was great, and I didn't understand why Krishna destroyed it, wasn't really wonderful and great at all. And that Krishna had given me something 100,000 times better. And had we stayed in that situation that I thought was wonderful, it wouldn't have been wonderful. And going through that experience really gave me a lot of faith, that it took 15 years between the catastrophe. I mean, now it seems almost silly. It's like that was a catastrophe. But for me at the time, I think I was 20 at the time. For me at the time, it was an absolute catastrophe. All my hopes and dreams were smashed. All of my desires for service, everything I wanted to do for Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya was just a pile of ashes, and it was complete devastation. But after 15 years, I saw it wasn't devastation. It was an opportunity. It was saving. Krishna had saved me from a sinking ship. And I realized, we may not always see the blessing at the moment. Sometimes it may take a month to see the blessing. Sometimes it may take years. I'm convinced some things I won't see while I'm in this body. Some things it may take being out of the body and having another state of awareness to go, oh, everything was perfect. Everything was loving. Everything was kind. Even the things that at the time didn't seem so at all. So it was, many experiences, but that one in particular, because it was something where I had invested my hopes and dreams in something I thought was Krishna conscious, but actually a lot of it was just external things. And when they were taken away, I was devastated. I was just absolutely devastated. And yeah, thank you, Krishna, that those things were taken away. Wow. What he gave me was so much better than what he took away. And I wouldn't have been able to get those things unless I'd had that taken. So, yeah, and then after a while, then you're kind of, well, you know, that doesn't mean it's never hard. That doesn't mean it's never hard. I mean, just in the last couple years, I lost some very deep friendships. I had people that turned against me, and quite painful. It was very surprising. It was, you know, sometimes we have people that you feel, these are people I can count on. You know, these aren't fallible soldiers. You know, these are solid rock people. They're not fallible. And anyway, they were fallible. Hare Krishna. You know, they turned out to be fallible. And it was hard. It was definitely hard. I mean, I went through a time, it was just like, but I didn't lose faith in Krishna. You know, it doesn't mean that I didn't have any sorrow about it, but I didn't lose faith in Krishna. I mean, in fact, it was very, very obvious from the beginning. Oh, Krishna's doing me a favor. Krishna's doing me a favor by detaching me from these situations. And
Wonderful.
Going to and having me depend on him more. So I see that. And I also, I'd say that my faith grows because I see when I do take shelter of Krishna and I do go internally to Krishna and I do absorb myself in the mission, then I don't have any problems at all. Like at all, I have no problems. All my problems go away, at least in that moment, they're gone. And I found that again and again and again and again. Yeah. That doesn't mean the external problems go away, but it just means they're not affecting me psychologically and emotionally or whatever, you know, they become irrelevant. And I've had that experience, I don't know, millions of times. So, you know, if I'm not doing that, well, that's not Krishna's fault. If I'm being absorbed in the catastrophe, that's not Krishna's fault. That's my fault. Why should I lose faith in him? You know, and if I go to him and I become absorbed in him, yeah, it's just like, is that all right?
Wonderful. Yeah, awesome. Oh, one quick thing within that. I'm sorry, I know you have to run, so please forgive me.
You actually have
So
somebody who's
typically, I know. So typically, last 30 seconds, 3 seconds one. Do you ever speculate that sometimes when people who are very close to you kind of go against you or they don't get you, do you speculate why it happened, or you just say, okay, Krishna, thank you so much. Again, I got to move on.
Well, it
How do you
depends.
deal with that?
If it's people who are very close to me that I really want to have a relationship with, then what I'm first going to do is try to fix things. You know, I consider that that's my service. If it's other devotees I'm working with or whatever, and there's been some difficulties, so I want to try to repair things and to take the humble position and apologize even if I don't think that I'm at fault, and to try to understand their point of view and see if things can be rectified. And sometimes they can, and sometimes they can't. And sometimes they can't be rectified now. Sometimes it takes a few weeks or a few months or a few years. And it's not always a black and white thing that either I have a relationship with them or I don't. It may be that I have to shift the kind of relationship that I have with them. I know one devotee, I decided this is a devotee, I can send text messages to her, but not phone calls. And try not to be in person. But if it's just chat messages, it's okay. So, you know, I may adjust like that, or I might say, well, this is someone I can deal with, but I can't work with them on a project. You know, if I work with them on a project, it doesn't work out. They're not happy, I'm not happy, whatever. Or sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's a person that I can't really have a close friendship with, but I can work with them on a project. So sometimes the solution is you're going to adjust those sort of things. It's not always either I have exactly the kind of relationship with this person that I wanted, or I walk away. And occasionally I walk away. I mean, I haven't had to walk away from too many relationships. I mean, as far as actually deep relationships I've had with people over many years, there's very few people Very, very, very few. I mean, I can only really think of two that I've had to just say, no, that's it. Nothing. I wish you well, be happy, remember Krishna, and that's it. But I find that very unusual. Usually just modifying my relationship. And a lot of it may be modifying my consciousness. Did I think this person was going to be a shelter instead of Krishna? No. Was I letting this person think that I was going to be their shelter instead of Krishna? Oh, there you go. Was I taking some pleasure from the fact that they saw me as a God substitute? Or was I trying to enjoy seeing them as a God substitute? Maybe I just have to adjust that kind of thing. Oh yeah, Krishna's God, not this person. Oh yeah, Krishna's God, not me. I'm not Krishna. They're not Krishna. Maybe that's all I have to do. All right, I do need to go. Thank you very much.